allow yourself to ground and just find your sense of presence. So move yourself away from distraction and toward the trueness of what you're feeling right now. Try to gaze the inward eye towards self. Sometimes it's a little tricky in the beginning, and if you need to have a little movement, something to kind of help your body feel a little more easeful, then do that. And come into your breathing body. Try to be a bystander for just a moment to observe the breath from the outside in. And then shift your awareness to be from the inside out, where you really feel what the breath feels like internally. How are you receiving? Do you have to pull and kind of drag the breath in? Is there a big open space for it to rush to? Where are you resisting? Where can you bring space? Let's bring the hands together. Bow in and let your face soften, let your eyes soften. See if you can feel just a little bit of a lift of the heart. Shoulders just ever so slightly back. Bow into your practice. Offer an intention here. And then relax your hands. All right, so let's go ahead and find our way onto our back. All right, so first, before we even go through our normal paces, put your feet on the ground and just feel your spine rest and see if you can imagine that you have some weights on your knees, dropping some weight toward your pelvis, where there's a deep grounding in the pelvis. And sometimes it's nice to just put the weight of your hands right across your hip bones and your low belly, so you can just feel that there's an encouragement to drop. All right, so before we even stretch our arms overhead, bring your knees into your chest and let's rock. Okay, and just feel your whole body rock, not just your hips and knees, but see if you can get your whole body to sway to and fro, even your head. So allow the rocking to be easeful. All right, and then be a little bit more still. And let's open up and stretch your limbs. So not in a starfish, where keep your legs together. Maybe even hook your fingers, your thumbs together. Just stretch a long stretch, a long body stretch. Feel into the reach. Now, maybe one side stretches longer than the other. You can reach one arm higher. You can reach one leg lower, so you really feel that you're having this length and stretch through your two sides. Notice the two sides of your pelvis going offline, where you hike one hip up and reach the other down, and then hike the other hip up and reach the other down. All right, and then draw your knees into your chest again and rock. This time, however you like to rock. You don't have to rock your whole body if that's not what your body's asking for. All right, let's circle the knees. Have the feeling, the kind of intention that your low back and your pelvis and your low belly and your hip flexors are all kind of floating, that they're not having to do any work. The work is really being done by your hands. Then change directions, switch over to the other side. Then we're going to pull the knees away from the midline and bring them back in toward the midline. It's so gentle, just opening up the pelvis, opening up the hip joints, paying attention to the symmetry or asymmetry that you feel. There's nothing that needs to change. We're just kind of sensing. The warm-up is obviously about warming up our tissues, but it's also about warming up our body-mind connection and paying attention to how we feel. All right, right knee into the chest and left leg comes along on the floor. Give it a good squeeze and have this opportunity to move your feet around, your ankles, your toes, breathing deeply. Then switch sides, left knee in, your right leg comes along on the floor, and feel free to move around in any way through your ankles, feet, or toes. So much weight bearing we do on our feet, give them a little space, a little breath. All right. And then relax, and put your feet down onto the ground one more time. So we're gonna start to wake up our core here a little bit with some teacups. So left knee drops down into left side of the pelvis, and put a teacup, imagine a teacup on your left knee. And we're gonna keep that teacup nice and steady as we open our right knee out to the right and bring that knee back in. And then we'll switch and take time to switch, where you really feel the rooting of your right femur bone down into your hip, and then open up the left leg out to the side. And we're gonna go back and forth like this. There's a couple things that happen. First of all, often when we try to kind of stabilize the deep low core, we hold our breath. So let's pay attention to how we're breathing and make sure that you're still flowing with your breath and not guarding, even though you're waking up some, fairly deep musculature in your low belly. Now you could do this with no belly at all and just kind of like sway your knee out and your other knee out. But this is what I want you to avoid. I want you to really feel that stabilization force as we move from one side to the other. And then go ahead and grab a block and stick it between your thighs. And while you're at it, grab a strap, because we're going to need that soon. So you might as well have a block and a strap close by. All right. So this is to stabilize your SI joints. All right. So we're going to do 3 different directions with the block. So if you are having a lot of pain, you can just choose hip width apart and not do the 3 positions. But if you are okay in your SI joints today, we'll do all 3 directions. So first, we're going to have the block on its skinniest width and have it between anywhere you want. You can put it between your knees or the crook right below your knees or your inner thighs, wherever you want it to be. Round your feet. 4 corners of your feet are going to stay grounded into the earth. Take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, engage your core and hug the block. And as you do this, you may lose the pinky toe side of your foot. So stay grounded through the pinky toe side of your foot all the way down to the outside of your ankle. Hug the block and then release. So let's do this a few times. Outer feet are grounded. Core is engaged. On the exhale, hug the block. Now it might seem like not a very big thing at all to do, but this is actually very stabilizing for the pelvis, for the SI joints. Make sure you're breathing as you squeeze, exhale, and as you release, inhale. And get the feeling that your pelvic floor is also having a little work here. So see if you can sense that as you squeeze the block, the pelvic floor engages. And as you release the block, the pelvic floor releases as well. Make sure you're doing the engagement on the exhale. It's easy if you have a reverse breathing pattern to kind of, alter this. Okay, now next we're going to take the block in between our legs somewhere that's comfortable for you at the middle width, so this width. So instead of this width, we're going this width. Okay, so middle width of the block. And you can experiment. Putting the block between your knees is usually a little more comfortable as it gets wider, but you experiment wherever you want to be. So remember to ground the outer feet, engage your core, exhale to hug the block and engage the pelvic floor. And then inhale to let it go. Now try to pay attention as you do these rhythmic squeezes, what the rest of your body is doing. How are your arms, your shoulders, especially how is your neck? Are you holding tension elsewhere in the body that's really unnecessary? Make sure you're breathing as you do this. If you do this consistently, you might start noticing that you have discrepancy, that one side kind of kicks into gear, has control faster or more clearly in your body. So it's a great way to understand the beginning of some of your movement patterns. Okay, now relax that. Then we're going to do the wide width of the block between our knees. Okay, so stick the block, your feet have to go a little bit wider. Round the outer feet, engage your core, hug on the exhale. Pelvic floor is lifting at the same time. And then make sure your pelvic floor and your belly get a moment to relax before you contract again. If we're always in contraction, then we actually get weaker. You know, if you always contracted your bicep and never let it go, it actually weaken your bicep. It's the flex and it's the contraction and the release, and the contraction and the release that really is what supports our strength building. How do you like the different positions? You know, do you have more or less sensing or control in one position or the other? Do you notice that one leg is dominant? We're going to relax that for a moment. Bring your knees to your chest and rock. So this might seem subtle, but it's actually very profound. And so you might notice that you have a little fatigue across your transverse abdominis or your inner thighs. So now we're going to grab a strap. We're going to put it around our thighs. Put a block between your thighs at the skinny width, and it can be, wherever you want. And then tie your legs in. All right, so once you have that sense of the block between your thighs and the strap around your thighs where that block is, try to rest within this neutral place. This is just one version of constructive rest. There's a better version that we're going to do at the end, but this is a simpler version of a way to rest your body if you are having low back pain. Okay, so a lot of times when we bend our knees, if we don't have the support of the strap or the block, we're actually working. It's not as relaxing. So allow your thighs to open up against your strap like they can fall, and then allow your legs to feel like they can fall into the block. So there's support on either side. Now, if you want even more support, we're not going to do this now because we're not going to stay here very long, but you could also put your feet right up against a wall to do this, even your toes up of the wall or more of your foot up a wall, so that you feel like that you're supporting your legs, not just from inside outside, but from your feet sliding forward or backward as well. All right, so I just want you to take a few breaths here. We're about to do something different, but I just want you to rest here for a moment. Let your back feel spacious and broad, like your sacrum is an ocean. It's so wide and big. All right. Now, you can keep the block here for this first round, then we'll move the block, but keep the strap for sure. Make sure your feet are not pigeon-toed, that they're grounded. And now we're going to pay attention to making sure we're grounding our big toe mounds and our inner heels. So you don't have to lift your outer feet, but you just want to be conscious to make sure your big toes and inner heels don't leave the floor or loosen their grounding when we do this. So pay attention there. On the inhale, relax. And on the exhale, engage your core and press your legs into the strap. So now we're working in abduction instead of adduction that we just did. All right, so we're pulsing. So inhale to relax everything. Exhale to engage against the strap. Start noticing if you're wanting to hold your breath. Pay attention to the big toe and inner heel, staying grounded, the core engaged. Let yourself be breathed through this. So it's just subtle little movement patterns that are very stabilizing for the SI joints. So if you have low back pain, SI joint pain, pelvic pain, these are really good therapeutics to do. Now, of course, our yoga practice is so rich. We have poses that we get up and go with. We have poses that we strengthen with and build endurance. And we have much more subtle practices like pranayama and things like this that don't require as much gross movements, but a lot more intention. Okay, now we're going to move the strap, and you can take the block or keep it. I prefer at this point to take the block away. So we're going to loosen up the strap, still cross your mid thighs, but now we're going to have the legs a little bit wider. Now you could do this where you started, instead of a block between your thighs, you could have done that first variation with your legs together. So there's, subtleties to adjust if you want to. It's your choice. Ground inner feet, engage your core, press into strap on, exhale. Inhale to relax. Just like when we were working with adduction, now that we're working with abduction, let's pay attention if we have one leg that's dominant, stronger, more connected to the core, just kind of sense into your patterns of movement. And then the last variation we're going to do is legs even just a touch wider. So a little wider than hip width apart, or a lot wider, that you just kind of feel for what is right for you. My strap is a little wonky today. It's not working perfectly, so I need to make some adjustments here. All right, so you find what's right for you. And then adjust the strap so it's in a good place on your thighs. I tend to move it up a little toward my knees when I take it wider, but that might not be what you need to do. Ground inner feet, engage that deep transverse abdominis. Remember your teacups, legs out, and then release them back. So feel there's a lot, especially when your legs go, wider than your hips like this. It's a more global sensation. Your glutes might start getting involved, your sides, your core. So just feel into the outer hip muscles. I mean, there's a lot going on. Stay grounded through the big toes and inner heels, and then release to let go. Try one more. And then we're going to take that strap off and bring the knees to the chest and just rock, be at ease. Okay, we, have all that stuff. You probably took your strap off. So now when we put our feet on the ground, notice without the block or the strap that, it's not as restful. You can't, deeply rest the thighs as much as you can as when they feel their boundaries of being held. Okay, but as you do this, even if you don't have that level of support, notice if your back can really relax, if you have a little more connection with the ease in your spine. All right, and then open up to a star. Thank you for bearing with a slow practice today. Knees into your chest, head comes up, let your back round. Okay, open things up. Exhale, round your spine. All right, and then roll over onto your side and come up onto your hands and knees. Now, I'll show you from the side. We're going to do some moving child's poses here. So first, we're going to tip the pelvis up and come back into child's pose. And then inhale and come on up. And we're going to round the pelvis and posterior tilt and come back to a child's pose. So just passing through those two variations of child's pose where you're in an anterior tilt as you go back, and then coming back up on the inhale, exhaling to come back down into a posterior tilt. And so just allowing the movement of the femur bones, the movement of the pelvis. One more time, each direction, an anterior tilt. Feel the compression in the hips. Coming back up. And then the posterior tilt. Feel the spaciousness in the hip joints. All right, now come up onto all fours and move through some cat-cows. Now be very gentle. If you have back pain, of course, cat-cows are one of our go-tos for loosening and keeping the back nice and free. But having a full range of flexion and a full range of extension when your back is bothering you sometimes can be a lot of movement. So make sure you're bringing the pose into the fullness that is available right this moment and not just pushing yourself into anything deeper than you want. All right, and wag your tail, swish and sway, almost like you're a fish moving through the water side to side with the hips. Just move left and right. All right, as we do this motion, we're going to turn our head. So as you bring sashay your hips over to the left, turn and look to the left. And as you move your hips over to the right, turn and look over the right. Okay, so just moving with breath, back and forth, side, side. And now we're going to add we're going to bring child's pose into this action. So dropping your hips over toward one heel more, and then up, turn your head the other way, dropping your hips over to the other side more. One more time, the other side. And then back up onto all fours. You can have a cat-cow or whatever feels good. Now let's move inside the cylinder of support. So we're going to move our rib cage into down toward the ground and then over to the side and up toward the sky, over to the other side. Okay, so like you're in a paper towel tube and you want your rib cage to touch the whole inside. Go the other direction. Make sure you're breathing. All right. Now, very gently do the exact same thing with your pelvis. So I've said this before, where if you imagine a paintbrush on your tailbone, paint a big circle on the wall behind you. So we're moving our pelvis in a big circle. Okay, so our hips, our tailbone drops down to the earth, over to the side, up to the sky, over to the other side. So we're doing a circle with our pelvis. And go the other direction. And you might start noticing that the rib cage roll and the pelvis roll like to work in unison. Okay, once you're done with all of that, just go ahead and rest back into child's pose and just enjoy all the open space in your back. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Walk the hands over to one side of the mat. Drop some weight into the pelvis. Relax your neck, your shoulders, your head. Breathe into the rib cage. And then inch over to the other side. All right, come on up now to complete this first, kind of sequence on the ground. Let's lift the arm up in the air for a twist. Hang out here for a moment, just enjoy the thoracic spine opening. And then thread your needle and find your way. Be very kind to your low back here. Let the stretch be in your shoulders and thoracic spine, not in your pelvis. And if you're not sure, take your knees a little further back. Pay attention if your hips push really far over to one side. Relax your neck. And inhale, reach that arm back up again. Hand down onto the ground and change sides. Arm lifting. Exhale and slide that arm down. So I will spend some time with our chest open on the way out. So just come here. Breathing deep. Feel the shoulders rest. Notice your back, pay attention. And then on the way up, let's pause up here at the top for a moment. Just feel your chest and your thoracic spine open. And relax. Okay, let's come to dog pose. So feel free, now we're gonna open up our legs a little bit more. So feel free to pedal your feet. Get your calves to wake up, your hamstrings, and kind of feeling that thread through the rest of the body. Bend your knees a lot. This will be easy and soothing for your back. Try to keep an anterior tilt of the pelvis so you feel like your pubic bone can kind of pass through the inner thighs a little bit and the sit bones widen and lift. Relax your neck. Feel even weight through feet and even weight through hands. Then walk your feet forward, bend your knees a lot. Soften your skull, wag your tail while you're here. And then ease the wagging, ground four corners of feet. The knees are really bent. And then that block that you're using, grab onto it, put your hands on it, and come into a half lift. You can use two blocks if you want, that's even better. Okay, so let's hang out here in the half lift for a moment. Take your hamstrings for a walk. See if you can lift your sit bones high. You can feel free to bend one knee and drop the heel of the other foot at the same time. So a little bit of pedaling. All right, and then pause into a half lift. So the blocks help us stay long in our spine. The thigh bones move back so we can feel all that elongation in our legs and in our back. Root into the four corners of your feet. Your knees, let them open up so you're stretching that popliteal muscle in the back of the knees, stretching the hamstrings, but we're not pushing our legs into hyperextension. All right, great. And bend the knees a lot. Okay. When you come up, lift your chest, drop your sit bones. So we're not rounding our back, we're bending our knees and coming up with our chest lifted. All right, so pause here for a moment and just bounce. So we're not leaving the floor, just feel a rebound moving through your body. Breathe. And start to feel the compressive forces of gravity. But see if you can just stay loose within those compressive forces. All right, and pause. Inhale, lift your arms up, open your chest, cactus, open the arms. Feel your chest get big and broad, and then exhale and round in. One more time, lifting arms up, a little back bend if it feels good. Stretch open your chest, cactus arms, and exhale and round. Okay, release the hands down. Take your feet wider than your hips. Okay, inhale, reaching one arm up. Down you go, other arm up.
Down you go. Turn sideways on your mat and get your legs to go a little wider. Same thing, up. Don't go very far over to the side. We're just starting to open the side bodies. Up the other side. And then come, and then the legs can come into a goddess. So bend your knees, turn your toes out, and come to a really wide squat. All right, so adjust your feet to be in a happy place. Start to open up the inner thighs, bearing weight a little into one foot and then a little into the other foot, lengthening the spine. All right, bring your feet, heel toe them a little bit closer, and come into another squat. So, you just adjust to have your feet be where you want them to be. Breathing well. All right, then lift your hips, a wide-legged Uttanasana. So you can put your hands back on those blocks. You can turn if you want, face back to the front of your mat so you're prepared where we're going next. So a wide-legged forward fold. And we're going to take this even wider now, so that you can be off your mat. It's you won't go anywhere even if you're off your mat. Just feel the thigh bones move back. Lots of space for belly and pelvis, and then heel toe your feet back in. All right, so Uttanasana. If you haven't shifted, go back to face the front of your mat. Bend deeply, let your back relax a bit. Place your hands down onto the ground, dog pose. Find breath here. Now pedal your feet if it feels good. Lift one hip, bend your knees a lot. Come forward into a plank. Hold yourself steady. Put your knees down onto the ground and lift your right leg straight out behind you. Engage your core. Start to turn on the belly. Turn on the back body. Find your breath. And then place that knee down onto the ground. Second side, lifting that leg up, just keeping both hands on the floor. Integrate into the core, feel your glutes and your hamstrings working. And come back down, back to child's pose. You decide which is your favorite way to be in that child's pose. All right, we're going to find our way onto the ground. Take your hands wide on the mat, out in front of you, and lift up to a Cobra Pose where you're really stretching from your core to your legs, from your core to your heart, all the way through your front body. Breathing deeply, and exhale, and melt onto the floor. Put your hands underneath your forehead. Take your feet a little wider than your hips, and lift your legs all the way up, both of them. So feel the work of the outer hips, the sense of compression against your sacrum where we're hugging the sacrum. And then exhale and melt. Come up onto all fours and move the spine about. Roll and wiggle and sway, whatever feels good. Loosening up the back. Bring your hands back onto the blocks. Right foot comes forward. Come into a lunge. Keep your knee down on the ground if you want, just for this first moment to feel into the stretch of the hip flexors. And then we're going to curl that back toe under and lift your knee off the floor. Have your hands on blocks. Even if you don't normally, if we're working with trying to support our spine, being a little more upright is very helpful because we tend to round our back when our hands are on the ground. So back and forth. With bending the front knee and straightening it, make sure you're breathing. All right, so ground yourself and come on up. Keep your hands down on your hips for this version today and pay attention to what's happening in your lumbar spine. So are you pushing your pelvis forward and kind of compressing into the back? See if instead, if you can draw your navel toward the spine, pubic bone up toward your belly button, and bend the back knee just a little bit more. So you really feel like your pelvis is not anterior tilting, but is neutral. Once you have that, arms out to the sides or up, wherever you are, breathing well. You can even lean forward just a little bit and take your arms back to help your back have some space. And then release the hands down onto the ground. Back foot comes forward, bend the knees a lot. Halfway lift, hands on blocks. Thigh bones come back. Then exhale, and let's take the right foot back. Left foot is now coming forward. Place your knee down onto the ground. Open up the hip flexor of that back leg. Try not to go anywhere without your breath. Okay, when you're ready, lift that knee, and we're going to bend and straighten the front knee. You don't have to go all the way straight with your leg. So pay attention to how your back is feeling. We want to stay neutral in our spine instead of feeling like we're rounding the back as we straighten our leg. So see if you can just stay within the range of motion that keeps the elongation of your vertebrae. All right, let's go ahead and find the lunge now. Ground your legs. Feel the work of your front leg glutes. So press the heel into the ground. And then come on up and put your hands on your hips. Bend your back knee a little bit. So it might feel a little different than you normally do. To the place where you feel like your pelvis, your center of gravity is lower. You can lift your pubic bone toward your belly button. We're still working strongly with the muscles of the legs. And then as you have that stability, you can bring your arms wherever you want them to be. If you feel there's any compression in your low back at all, try bringing your arms back and slightly lean forward so that you're still doing the work of the lunge, grounding your legs, pressing them into the earth, feeling that space in the spine, but you have less chance of compression. Breathing well. Let's bring our hands down. Walk your back foot forward, bend the knees a lot, and then rise up to stand. So one more time, bounce. Just a little bit of offering compression to the vertebrae and the rebound through the body. Now, if this hurts at all, obviously don't do it. But if we can get used to loosening our joints and letting them receive the cushion some of the weight bearing of compression, this is a good thing. So, if you're always locked out in your knees or your hips, we don't get to absorb compressive forces. So get used to the knees being bent, the ankles being soft, the pelvis being able to receive. All right, now let's find Uttanasana. And just pay attention. Is the center of gravity running through your body well? What is your tendency? Do you like to lean into one foot? Do you tend to push the pelvis forward and lock out the knees? Let's see if we can start from the bottom up. So feel the four corners of your feet spread out and root. Let your ankle joints be not locked. So you see if there's a little mobility in your ankles. Same with your knees. Don't push your knees back. See if you can have a little micro bend in there where there's a sense of freedom in the joint, that anything's possible. So when a joint has just a little give in it, any movement that is necessary has its way. But if you lock out a joint, so try it. Lock out your knees and just notice, what's available to you if you got kind of gently pushed on by one side or the other. And now soften your knees and see that if you can imagine that you can move around a little bit in our wakame that we've done before, where you feel if someone was going to touch you or move you from any angle, you would be receptive. Nothing would lock out and make your back tweak. Okay, so soft ankles, soft knees, soft pelvis. And just keep traveling up the body so that you're able to receive. So instead of locking the knees and pushing the pelvis forward and sinking into the low back, let's take the thigh bones back and the shin bones forward and feel that your shoulders and head sit right upon the pelvis. So everything's stacked and receiving. Open up through your chest. Let's take a deep breath, reaching the arms to the sky, and bend your knees and float forward. Halfway lift.
Legs get straighter. Relax and melt all the way down. Step back to dog pose. Lengthen through your spine. Fill up your breath. Come forward into a plank. Integrate through the center of your body. And then put your knees down to support you. And take any back bend that you feel is a healthy one for your back. So shoulders come away from the ears. Find your breath. And then melt and fold. Come up onto all fours. Swish around and sway. Okay. We're going to come into pigeon pose. So if you can't do pigeon pose, go ahead and move your body into reverse pigeon pose. With pigeon pose today, even if you can go all the way to the floor, I would love for you to put some blankets underneath your pelvis so you have that level of support. I'm going to have 2 blankets underneath me today. So my right sit bone and my left thigh can both rest on those blankets. So my pelvis is lifted off the floor, which will take pressure off my knee and off my SI joint. So once you're in that position, stretch your arms forward. I have my hands on the block, so you don't have to. Okay, find your breath and start to find your way. So now sometimes when we go a little too deeply into hip stretches, we aggravate the back and the SI joint. So sometimes if you tend to have sciatic nerve pain, you want to be very mindful to not go too deeply into your pigeon pose. Extend the spine. Feel the epicenter of the stretch at your hips. I have a block under my head, which I think is always a good idea. It tells the nervous system that all is well and you can relax. Pay attention to your breathing. So even though this may not be as deep as you sometimes do because of the props, if you're used to going down, there's so much more maneuverability in your spine for you to stay spacious in the spine. Let's come back around, change sides, and come into pigeon pose on the other side. So same thing, your left sit bone and your right thigh have the support of the blanket underneath them. The spine can stay really spacious, so there's no compression in the lumbar back. Long spine. Come as low as your body says to go. Support your head with the block. Allow the deep stretch to happen in the hip without tweaking the pelvis. And hopefully, with the amount of support that you're taking, your joints are not revolting. But you want to have your joints feel safe. And the belly of the muscle in your glutes should really be where the epicenter of your sensation is. Go ahead and find our way out of there. Now you can use a firm stack of blankets or you can use a block. We're going to come into a supported bridge pose. I'll use my blankets since they're here. I'm going to put my pelvis up on the blankets and my chest on the floor. And I try not to go too high. So you want to have this fairly low today. So just feel into a little bit of like a setting of the pelvis. Breathing well. Adjust the height to your preference. Sometimes lower is better. Sometimes higher feels nicer. So your choice. We're gonna bring the knees toward the chest, so a little traction for your back now. Full breaths here. And we're gonna lift the legs straight up in the air. Now, if you don't like the leg up the wall pose without the wall, you can bend your knees. You can bring your knees a little closer to your chest instead of directly over your legs, over your pelvis. You can try taking your legs wider apart, separate from each other. So just experiment with anything that allows there to be a sense of ease across your back. So there's no rules. So just you can move around like I'm doing too to kind of just explore. How does this make my back feel? How does this make my back feel? So pay attention for your patterns. What gives ease in your body? Bring your knees back toward your chest. And then lower your feet down. Lift your blankets or blocks out of there. And one more time, rest with your pelvis on the ground. We're going to windshield wiper our knees. So take your feet a little wider than your hips. I want you to go fairly slowly with this. You can even, if it's comfortable, pause at the bottom so that one side's in internal rotation and one side's in external rotation. And then you can come on up and go to the other side. Maybe have a little pause. Now, if this bothers your back, don't do the pause. All right, now we're going to lift up and just move. So over to the left, over to the right. Over to the left, over to the right. So you can kind of go at the pace that feels right for your body. And then neutral one more time. Grab your strap again. Reach your right foot up into the strap. The left foot is on the ground. Drop the weight of your right femur bone into the earth. So of course you're stretching through your glutes and hamstrings, but you're also sinking that femur bone like we did in the teacups earlier. Sink the femur bone. Lengthen the spine, elongate the spine. You might even want to hold the strap with just the right hand, so your left arm can have a turn reaching up overhead, helping your spine elongate. Now, you can bring your arm back if you want to strap, two hands on the strap. Let's cross the right leg over to left. So right over top that left thigh, lengthen your spine. That leg up, 2 feet in the strap for a moment. Feel free to flex and point your feet. Take a moment to enjoy some more opening across your feet. And then the left foot is going to come into the strap and the right foot is going to come onto the ground. Relax the shoulders. Root the left femur bone down. Feel the length of your spine. You can flex your toes and lift your heel. Unlock your knee. Stay present with your breathing. Cross the left leg over to the right. Enjoy a little stretch in the outer hip. Breathing well. All right, that leg back up. We're going to take the leg down onto the ground. Okay, so take a moment. You can bring your knees to your chest. You could do a happy baby pose. You could do a regular twist or any of the above. So just find a little bit of completion. We're going to do Shavasana a little differently today. So just take a couple of postures to help you allow Shavasana to come with ease. So whatever those postures may be. Now, normally,
you know, if you don't want to bother with all the props, if your back hurts, what I would suggest for Shavasana is to put your calves up on a couch or a chair. And maybe if you have something heavy like a sandbag or a bag of rice or something, you could put it over your low belly. But today we're going to do this more thorough constructive rest position. So you need your strap. And if you don't have a strap, then you can just go back to what I just said, putting your calves up on a chair. So we're going to take the strap underneath our buttocks, okay? And then we're going to cross the strap over in front of us, and then we're going to tie it behind us. Now, if you don't have a long enough strap to be able to crisscross like that, then you can just strap it around your thighs like we did earlier. But if you have a good long yoga strap behind your buttocks and then crossed over and then tied together. My strap is just a little too short. I should have got my other strap out today. But if you have a long enough strap, strap it like that, okay? So behind your buttocks, crossed over your pelvis, and then tied behind your back. Once you have that strap in place, then you're going to come down, and because you have a crisscross, you can take the strap that's on your thighs and kind of pull it down. So it's really holding your legs. And if you don't have a strap that does that, you can use a bathrobe strap or a tie or a scarf, and you can just literally take a strap across your thighs and tie your thighs in. Now stick a block between your thighs so that you have that support of both from the internal and the external. So we're trying to just get our legs to relax. Now, if you don't have a wall nearby and you want to try that perspective of having your feet up against something, you can have your mat up again, you know, roll a blanket underneath your mat so your toes are a little elevated so that you feel like you kind of have to stop gate there too. So experiment with this constructive rest position. And if you don't have the props for it, try putting your calves up on a chair or up on a couch, something that, you know, allows you to kind of be in this position where you're really relaxed. So either the constructive rest position with the strap and block, or calves up on chair. Whichever position you're choosing, you want to feel as though the weight of your femur bones are support for your pelvis, that they can anchor your pelvis just by their weight, not by your effort, but just by the weight of the bones helping you to sink into the earth a little bit more. Let your back relax. Many times when we have back pain, there's a lot of unconscious holding, unconscious tension. So if that is the case, explore what's here. What needs to be released? What can I release? How can I use my breath to help me? So find your way into the melting of Shavasana, the ease across your face, the breath, the feeling of weight. Let's begin to deepen our breathing. Now, we're here just for a few minutes, but truly, if you can get comfortable in constructive rest position, you can stay here for 15 or 20 minutes. And the longer you stay, the more your body has a chance to unwind some of these low back SI joint tension patterns that we find. So give yourself the healing time you need. You can even stay right now. You don't have to come out. But if you're ready to be done, you can take the strap away if it's just tied around your thighs. If it's wrapped around you, you kind of have to loosen up the strap and disentangle yourself. And eventually come onto your side. Now, when you come onto your side, rest there for just a moment. Give yourself a chance to kind of curl. Let's find a way to come onto or upright. So lean a little further over, push onto your hands, and bring yourself to a comfortable seat. So breathe deeply. Offer your practice, share your energy. Namaste. All right, thanks everyone.